We have decided. Declaration number 7. We declare that no debt can survive in the atmosphere of our generosity. Therefore, we have decided to give ourselves as conduits of poverty-breaking prosperity and liberality. I am convinced that generosity is the best antidote to the spirit of poverty and the reality of lack. I would go as far as to declare that the seeds of our prosperity are often hidden in the times of apparent lack or when lack is threatening, such as when the nation's economy impinges on our personal economics. The 26th chapter of the book of Genesis relates a story about Isaac beginning with an attention-grabbing observation, quote, "There was famine in the land," unquote. A famine is defined as any extreme and general scarcity, and most often refers to the scarcity of food. This is a condition most of us can't personally relate to, but we can imagine the strain such a circumstance would put on our pocketbook and on the ability to supply even the most meager of provisions for our family. This story gets even more compelling when you read to verse 12. Quote, "Then Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. The man began to prosper and continued prospering until he became very prosperous," unquote. In a land of famine, at a time of extreme scarcity, Isaac prospered abundantly. We know that between the condition of the land in verse 1 and the prosperity recorded in verse 12 through 13, God promised Isaac that if he stayed in the land, he would prosper. There is no doubt that prosperity comes from the hand of the Lord. Yet there is something in this story we dare not miss. If Isaac had not planted, put his seed at risk, there would have been no 100-fold increase. Isaac made a decision to look beyond the natural conditions around him and generously plant his seed, trusting in the promises of God. Prosperity was hidden in the time and condition of lack and released through obedient generosity. Solomon, considered to be the wise investor, made this observation. Quote, "There is one who scatters yet increases more, and there is one who withholds more than is right, but it leads to poverty. The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will also be watered himself," unquote. The Message Bible capsulizes Solomon's words this way, quote, "The world of the generous gets larger and larger. The world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller," unquote. Generosity broadens our territory and increases our influence. It also increases our authority and grants us favor. David, after his disastrous return to Ziklag, was able to get back all that the enemy had stolen along with the flocks of the enemy. David took his bounty and distributed it to the cities of the tribe of Judah that were in the area. David's generosity opened the hearts of the people of Judah, granting David favor. It was no accident or coincidence that the tribe of Judah was the first to recognize and proclaim David as king of Israel. Generosity is an identity issue. When we live generously, we are identifying with the character and nature of our Father and demonstrating that we are blood related. Just look at the list of God's generosity found in Psalms 103. We live in our true identity when we are conduits of generosity to the needs and dreams of those around us. Selfishness, on the other hand, is anti-God. When we serve only our self-interests, we misrepresent God's character and live in contradiction to our true identity. We are children of the King, and generosity is the nature of the King's kids. Our born-again nature is one that is looking for opportunity to lay down our life for another, not one that is stingy and withholding of good when we have the power to do it. Our liberality should be an outward expression of who we are on the inside. Generosity is a heart issue. It's not about what's in our hand, but what's in our heart. With generosity in our heart, what's in our hand becomes available to the people and projects we love. When my first grandchild, Samantha, was born, Deborah and I were certainly not financially flush, but my heart was captivated by this little baby girl. There were no cell phones with high-resolution cameras then, so with what little money I had, I purchased an expensive video camera in order to capture every special moment. All other financial needs took a backseat to that little girl. I was a living illustration of the truth of Jesus' words, quote, "Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also," unquote. I would add, where your heart is, there will be your generosity also. Paul, in his second letter to the Corinthian church, brags on the generosity of the Macedonian Christians as they gave to assist the believers in Jerusalem. He makes a curious statement regarding their giving. Quote, "In a great trial of affliction, the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty, they abounded in the riches of their liberality," unquote. And he goes on to write, quote, "that according to their ability, yes, and beyond their ability, they were freely willing," unquote. In a time when the Macedonian Christians were dealing with their own lack, they responded with great generosity. Generosity is not giving out of our abundance, but giving abundantly out of what we have. When we do this, needs are miraculously met, dreams are fulfilled, and God increases our ability to give again. Generosity is a faith issue. We live according to what we believe, and what we believe will determine the size of our world. Not what we say we believe, but what we truly believe demonstrated by what we do. Generosity in any form requires believing the promises of Scripture regarding a lifestyle of generosity, and there are many. Tommy Barnett, a dear friend and great man of faith, once stated, "Whatever you want out of life, give it away." How do we do that? We do that by believing and acting out our belief through generosity. When what you have is not enough for your need, make it your seed. This is what I believe the widow did when she gave her last few pennies in the offering. She didn't do it as a signal of giving up. She gave it in faith, believing in God's generosity in response to hers. We have decided to give ourselves to be channels of God's resources into the lives of others in order to break the back of poverty, lack, and debt. As we do that, we are believing that the resources God puts through our lives are making an eternal difference. Think on Solomon's words one more time from the Message Bible. The word of the generous gets larger and larger. The word of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will also be watered himself.